Good morning, good morning, good morning. Coach Candy here with Coffee Chats, and welcome. Happy Monday, everybody. It's first Monday of August. Wow. Anyway, I hope y'all had a great weekend. Grab your coffee, grab your tea, grab your water, grab juice, whatever it is that gets you fired up, get you rocking and rolling this morning. Welcome, everyone. It's so good to see y'all. I'm just going to wait as everybody jumps on here for a minute. Good morning, Paul. How are you? Happy Monday. Happy Monday. Happy Monday. Hope you all had, good morning, Carol. Hope you all had a great weekend. It was a little warm here in Texas again, but it was a fantastic weekend. So hope everybody's feeling fired up for Monday morning and getting ready to go. I am doing well. Thank you, Paul. I appreciate that. Doing really well. A little tired this morning, not sure why, but doing well otherwise. So excellent. Good to see all of you as always. We're going to get into some conversation today about the difference between listening and hearing. I think oftentimes we think we're listening to people when actually we're hearing them. And we're hearing them for a couple reasons. We hear them, one, to respond. So we're looking for how we're going to show up, how we're going to respond, how we're going to put our agenda out, how we're going to say different things. Sometimes we're hearing what we want to hear. And sometimes all we do is hear the words, right? Good morning, Shirley. So what I want to think about today is the difference between, good morning, Yvette. There is a great difference. I absolutely agree, Paul. Listening is a more holistic, more comprehensive, more whole body experience. It's an energetic experience where hearing is simply just a matter of a reflection of whatever you are, the words you are hearing, the context you want to put things in, and some other things. And if you look at it kind of dimensionally, hearing is more two-dimensional. Listening is a very 3, 4, and plus dimensional experience. It's a very energetic space for us to get into. Good morning, good morning. So yeah, I want to have some conversation this morning around the differences between listening and hearing. Like I said, most people feel like they're listening when actually they're hearing at best, and sometimes they're not even hearing. They're interpreting what they want the conversation to be. They're interpreting what they think they hear. Good morning, Deb. And oftentimes even what they think they're hearing is not what they're hearing. It's coming from their own context, their own filter, their own frames, and it's why conversations can get so contentious so fast. Conversations can go awry is because two people come in with their set agenda, and they're coming in from a perspective or a filter to hear what they need or want to hear, and when they don't hear that, things kind of get off kilter, right? And sometimes when people don't hear the exact words or the exact phrase or the response they're looking for, they're no longer in the conversation if they were in the conversation to begin with, truthfully. Good morning, Robin. So I want you to think about that. Hearing oftentimes is this very two-dimensional space, and oftentimes it's not even really, truly even hearing what's going on in that moment. Good morning, Mateo. And so, like I said, hearing is very two-dimensional. Hearing is very flat. Hearing is based on our own filters and our frames and how we're showing up in relation to that. Listening is a much more energetic, more three-dimensional, more whole body experience, because listening isn't just what's being passed in terms of the conversation, in terms of words. Listening is really feeling someone's energy in the moment. It's watching their body language. It's hearing what's not being said. It's hearing their heart and their soul through what they might be masking with just words, right? And it's interesting because oftentimes we're like, well, they said this. And it's like, did they really say that? And it might be the words they put out, which could be a mask, which could be a filter, which could be what you think you heard. Is that really what they said, though? And so oftentimes, simply because the words come out, is that what they meant? Is that what the message was that they were trying to convey? And so it's really interesting to me. I do a lot of work, especially in my corporate work, around really being able to listen, active listening, because listening is also a very present, it's a very active, it's a very engaged space. You can't listen to somebody and not be present. So that in itself is a difference between hearing and namaste, hearing and listening. hearing is one of the times is often kind of like just you filtering things in. You can hear background noise, you can hear the TV, you can hear, and oftentimes we're not present in that space. You can hear all kinds of stuff and not be present to it. Listening requires a very focused presence. It requires yourself to be very available, very open, to receive that person in their entirety. And like I said, it goes way beyond what they say in terms of the words. It's in everything else that's in their energetic force field, or their vibration, or everything else that's going on as an interplay with those words that you hear. It's the tonality, it's the physicality, it's the spacing or the speed of their language. It's the way they make eye contact or not. It's the way that how they lean in or don't. It's the space in between the words, right? There's so much power oftentimes in this space between the words. Is there no space, or is there a lot of space? And there's a lot of different meanings that can come out of just the spacing alone, right? And so when you're listening with your whole heart. You're listening with your whole being. You're being present. And too often, I would say majority of our conversations or communications are from a hearing space, not a listening space. If you think about everything that's going on, you think about everything is from a hearing space at best. Sometimes it's not even at that level. It's not even gotten to that. But it's not a listening space. It's not a listening space, because listening requires, and here's the thing I want you to think about. Listening requires, Paul, yes, it requires you to concentrate on the speaker and not look around in a busy space. Yes, there's a connection. Here's the thing, listening means you need to be vulnerable. Because just to what Paul's saying, it's very easy to protect ourselves by looking around the room and like seeing who else is in here and trying to make sure we're not seen, or we want to be seen, or whatever it is. When you are really with somebody, when you are really in a deep connection, there's a vulnerability to that. There's a vulnerability to what everybody else perceives on the outside. There's a vulnerability for you opening up your heart and being available for that person. But there's an incredible vulnerability in listening. And I know a lot of people will be like, that seems weird, maybe. And there's an incredible vulnerability in listening. There is a space where when you are wide open and when you deeply connect, listening is a deep connection. When you deeply connect with someone else, you are allowing yourself to be seen, and you are allowing that person to be seen as well. And so I want you to think about that opportunity as you're thinking about, we talk a lot about, Brené Brown's work around vulnerability and shame and stepping in the arena. I want you to think about that opportunity to be more vulnerable in listening. Imagine if you showed up for somebody, Imagine if you showed up for somebody without any agenda, without the need to respond, without the need, but just to hold a space, to listen and to see them. Listening requires being seen and seeing and being vulnerable in that space. And so let me see, Mateo, in technology as a leader and longtime project manager, we are always looking at body language, facial responses. So many people get hung up just on the words, not the intonation, volume, and rhythm. Yeah, it's one of the reasons why I say you can't have real meaningful conversations in email or text or on Facebook or social media without having some kind of engagement, without having even these conversations here while we can deeply connect. And I can do my best to listen between the words. I can do my best to feel you energetically. We're missing elements of what would make this an even deeper conversation, and that's having that energetic exchange, that opportunity to really lean in and feel each other. It's still one-sided, right? And so a lot of your written communication can be very flat, because it's one of the reasons why it makes it so interesting, why books are so fascinating to me. And I used to get in an argument with a teacher of mine, I think I mentioned this before, in high school. We did not see eye to eye at all, and we would constantly argue about what the author meant in the book. He's like, well, the author meant this, and I said, well, how do you know that? How do you know that? Isn't it more important that I can defend why I think this is what he's saying versus this being the right answer? Because I know as a writer myself, especially with my poetry, it can have very different meaning at different times, depending on what I need from it, depending on what that message is that is for me inside of it. And it's stuff that I even wrote, and I will tell you that it has a different meaning based on what I need in terms of how I need to receive it when I show up in that space. And so I find it interesting because books, for example, I can read books a million times and get something different each time because I'm listening for something different. I'm making myself present and available for whatever message I need to receive. And there's a listening in how we receive things too, right? There's a listening when the little messages of the universe that whisper within you. It's the being able to, and I love the way that Paul said that, it requires you to concentrate on the speaker. And the speaker doesn't always have to be another person. The speaker can be your own intuition. The speaker can be something that feels like it's calling you or it's drawing you in. It can be a universal or energetic pool. It's listening to the message that you need to receive. It's also listening and allowing others to be seen in that space. And so I want to think about that Mateoism. Just because you hear the words does not mean you are listening. Just because you are speaking words does not mean you are communicating. Absolutely. And I think oftentimes we use words, and sometimes inappropriately so, as a mask. We think, oh, if I'm speaking, then therefore I look a certain way, or I'm being perceived a certain way. And sometimes there's more power in the silence. Sometimes there's a deeper conversation. Have you ever sat with somebody where it's that person that knows your soul? And I hope all of you have experienced this at least one point in your life. And I know they're rare opportunities sometimes, that when you can sit with someone, excuse me, and you're not being distracted. You don't have your head. You're not just sitting with somebody like this. You're just sitting still with somebody. There's no words. And you walk away and you feel like you've had the best conversation you've ever had in your life. Do you know what I'm talking about? Those moments that are so rich and so powerful. And it's interesting. I've had that with friends before where one of us was hurting. And it was like, I don't need you to say anything. I just need you to hold space, right? And I've done that over the phone with people where you can just sit. You can hear each other breathing and you're just in a space. And I've done that at times for like 15, 20 minutes where at the end of the conversation, thank you so much. That was the best conversation ever. Do you have those moments? Because there's such a capacity for listening when there are no words. And I know for some people that seems odd to say, but sometimes there is more listening to be had when there are no words than when there's the mask of words that keep being spewed out, because oftentimes words can just be that. It can be a mask, they can be a filter, they can be a way to protect ourselves when listening involves, oh, I love that, Yvette, an exchange, right? Listening involves being present. Listening involves opening up a space. Listening involves letting your heart be wide open and be vulnerable, right? And it's that energetic exchange. It's not as much about the words. There's so much more that can be said energetically. I mean, our energy speaks. It's the reason why some people are drawn to us and why they're not. It's why some of you might be like me. You walk in a room and people know I'm there even if I didn't say anything, because I have an energy. I have an energetic blueprint. I have this space that I can communicate a lot simply in my energy. And I had a boss in corporate once that said that to me. She's like, Candy, you can walk in a room and you can lift people up. She goes, well, you can walk in a room and you can flatten them. And she goes, you don't have to say a word. Your energy speaks volumes. And that was one where she was like, you need to be mindful of your energy. And of course I fought it in the moment. But she was right. She's right that we have an energetic force field around us. We have something we're conveying at all times. And so think about your energy right now. Are you currently starting your Monday? Think about and listen to yourself right now. Listen to the energetic field around you and ask yourself, am I communicating a space of love and gratitude? And I think about this because some of you might have saw my post on over the weekend, and as an empath sometimes, and I do a really good job usually of protecting my energy, especially in the work that I do, being so available to so many people and being a deep empath where I feel things very deeply, especially pain and hurt and things that, and I had a series of things in the midst of the shootings and everything else this weekend that just all hit, that I just felt tapped out Saturday night. It just felt so heavy. And I believe that love cures everything. I believe in gratitude. I believe in those to my heart. And there's days where it gets hard, it gets heavy. And when you're listening, ooh, when you're listening, you draw that in sometimes. And so I was doing things and I was putting that out there because I could feel the heaviness of it and could feel that it just was hurting my heart, right? And so listening, because what I was noticing in the interactions, whether it be listening to certain things or there wasn't a lot of listening going on. There was a lot of speaking, there was a lot of words, there was a lot of things, but there wasn't this listening. And listening sometimes in that space, it's very vulnerable to listen at that level where you're feeling everything, where you're bringing that forth. And don't worry, I cleared some of it out, but some of why I'm tired today and cleared it out. And so what I'm doing right now is I woke up this morning and I was listening to my body. I was listening to my whole being in essence to say, where am I at today? Am I available to be at my highest and best level? Can I put myself in a place of deep gratitude? Can I be the love and the light that I choose to be? Or do I need to take some self-care for myself, right? And there's a combination in there. There is a, here I can show up for all of you. I can be here. I can listen and lean in. And I moved a couple meetings out because there's a self-care piece that needs to happen when I look at my calendar today and it's pretty jammed, which I don't typically do for a Monday anyway. And coming off of sort of that energetic space, I need to listen. I need to lean into my own intuition and listen to not everything that's going on outside of me, but listen to what's going on and what's the communication, what's the dialogue, what's the meaning in my own space as well. And so thinking about how yes, energy in a room, right? It's so powerful, and energy speaks volumes over the words many times. And energy within yourself, within your own being, speaks words at times, right? Yvette, I was at a visitation once. When I came up to the person who lost his wife, I gave him a tight embrace and we squeezed hands. No words we said. Whew. See, that's huge. But we knew, we understood each other. Yes, there's so much power. There was an article when I was kind of, after I posted that, things were challenging Saturday. There was a lot of energy in the world. There was this beautiful post about an elderly woman who was traveling. She was like 91, going to see her family. And she hadn't flown in like 30 years or something. It was really freaked out, really scared. And she asked the gentleman next to her if she could hold his hand. And not only did he hold her hand, he literally, he just comforted her the whole time. When she couldn't find her sister when she got off the plane, he made sure that they were together. I mean, it was just this every moment of being available and present. He listened to what she really needed. She made a request, which he honored, but he listened on such a level, just like what Yvette's saying, that he was able to lean in and be open and be, available and see her where she was at and be able to offer that compassion and that love and that grace. And listening requires, good morning, Herbie. Good morning, Martha. Good morning, Herbie. Listening requires a whole different sense of being, sense of presence, sense of being wide open, being vulnerable. Listening is this whole energetic space of how you receive someone else, how you receive yourself, versus hearing, which is, like I said, very flat and two-dimensional. Oftentimes hearing is simply just a response to something, where listening is not about response. Listening is about a receiving space. Listening is about a holding space. Listening is about sometimes knowing that there's not a response that's needed. Listening is just being really purposeful in how you're showing up, how you're holding a space, how you're, being still and creating the space in between the words, the breath, the energetic way we show up, the presence. And good morning, Peggy. Mateo, there is a biochemistry part too, pheromones. Our mind can affect our brain electricity, but if we are sick, someone is eating great, someone is high on drugs, all the mechanics puts off undetectable sets that we respond. Yeah, and that is true. We do respond to things, which is why it's so important that we listen to what we need and we listen to how we need to protect ourselves in that space, because we don't need to be wide open and listen to everybody. Because if you're absorbing all of that noise that other people are consumed with, people that are there, they're putting out, people, whatever vibration, you have to be really mindful of that. And that vibration, I did post that story, right? Yes. Absolutely. I love that story too. It was Good Morning, Peggy. It was so powerful. And it was interesting because even again, this morning I woke up, I'm like, what am I going to talk about this morning? And I happened to just get ready for the call, and, between everything, because I knew there were some things I didn't want to talk about yet about this weekend. It's still just too, right? And I don't really want to start my Monday that way. And so I leaned into that and I was listening, and then something showed up that was talking about what you hear, and I went, ooh, very interesting. What we hear, are we listening? And it just kind of, like it always does, I was listening, and it dropped in because it felt like this is the conversation that needed to happen this morning, right? And so, again, I thank you all for weighing in and leaning into the conversation. Yvette, my sister was on a flight to Atlanta yesterday. She said she had this really nice conversation with a lady from India who was sitting next to her. She said when they got off the plane, they hugged. Yeah, I love that. I love making friends. I can make them in the bathroom, on the plane, whatever. That I love that moment where you feel so connected to somebody that you're like, oh, let me hug you. Let me. When I had that 20-hour delay of travel coming back from Vancouver last time, that's what it was like. It was like this energetic, bubble we were creating, and people were just leaning in and listening and being present. And there were times, we had 20 hours together. We did not talk the entire time. This group that sort of like evolved from that, we just were there together. We were experiencing it together. We were listening to what any of us might need in any moment. And there was just this piece of knowing, hey, we're in this together. Hey, we're just having this experience. Hey, we can lean in and we can lift each other up, and at times when we'd see the standby list, we're like, okay, we're going to manifest all of us are getting on this flight. And we all got on one, and then we all got off of one, and then we all got to travel again together, and we all made it to Austin in that space. But there's so much value in being able to listen, in actively listening, and knowing that it is a very present, very engaged, very connected space that is vulnerable, that is wide open, that requires you to be really in it, and requires you to shut down all the noise and the filters and the agendas and what you think you need to get from the conversation. Allow yourself to just be available and open to receive. Oh, that is huge. That's so huge. Oh, especially if she's not a big hugger. I love that, Yvette. I love that. And so think about in a moment, right? We can be so available to offer more compassion and kindness and grace when we listen, versus when we're hearing so that we can respond. When we're hearing so that we can, make sure that our agenda is the one that's being pushed forward, so that we're hearing so that no one sees us and we can put up a wall and protect ourselves, versus allowing ourselves to really be in that space to receive. Herbie, this is so timely. I have perceived big potentially charged conversation on the horizon, and this reminds me to lean in, breathe, and be present. Yeah, I love that. And this is the thing. We create a story oftentimes when we know we have to have those kinds of conversations, or we know that those conversations are on the surface. And so we start planning everything we're going to say. We start going in, oh, I want to hear this. Oh, this is what, and I even watch, there's times that therapists do that. They're like, what do you need to hear? And I'm like, ooh, I don't like that question so much. And so when you can let go of the agenda and I think about the best possible outcome, I'm like, what is the best possible outcome for both of us right now? It's to feel heard, it's to feel seen, it's to feel respected, it's to feel loved, and it's to know that we can both walk away with something that makes us feel like this conversation moved forward. It's to feel as if there's a solution that's coming from this, and not more contention, or not more charge, or not more frustration, or not more polarization, or not more whatever, but it's to feel like we've connected on some level, that we're now moving this conversation forward. And here's the thing, not every conversation gets solved in a one pass, right? Not every conversation requires you can only listen one time, you got it, good, done. Many times it's an evolutionary, it's a peeling back the onion kind of layering in terms of the conversations we've had. And it requires us being able to listen on one level, being able to see someone, be seen, and then peel it back and listen on another level, right? And continue, as Herbie says, lean in and breathe. The power of the space in between, the breaths, that we have in between the words is so powerful, because that breath can be a, okay, now I need to figure out what I'm going to say next, or it can be a, okay, I'm here and I'm grounded and I'm centered, and I know that didn't sound like what I wanted to hear, and I know there was energy in that. And just like when your triggers show up, which by the way is a listening space as well, I'm going to get curious as to why that person said it that way, and where's this coming from, and am I really hearing the meaning, or am I just hearing the words that feel sharp and cutting or whatever? I want to lean in. I want to get curious because I value this relationship too much. This is the opportunity when we're, especially with loved ones, instead of fighting, is to lean in and say, okay, what's going on here? Is this really about this topic, or is there something else? Which most times, and most of you, especially married couples, you know that most, or in relationships, you know that most, quote, fights and big discussions aren't about the actual discussion of fight at all. They're about something that's been underlying, something that's been building, something that's been a conversation that somebody's not been willing to have. And it's been a space of someone not feeling listened to, or someone not feeling heard, or needs are not being met. And so then there's a moment where there's the breaking point, and all hell breaks loose on something that isn't even what the whole thing is about. And it requires listening to be able to dig in deeper to know what that is. And so I want you to consider, I want you to consider for this week, how you can listen more actively, how you can listen more presently, how you can allow yourself to be more open and vulnerable when it comes to the real meaningful conversations that you're having. Let go of your need to respond. Let go of your need to have an agenda or to have something go a certain way. Let go of the perceived outcome of what you want out of it, and think more in terms of best possible outcome for all of us. Excuse me. And I think about, we talk a lot about win-win. I'm not a fan of the win-win conversation. Win-win says, oh, it's good for you, it's good for me. And oftentimes when we think win-win, it's more a compromise space, which means both people lose at some level. I want you to think of a win-win-win, which is a win, a real true win for them, a true win for you, and a true win for anyone that's affected by the outcome and the interchange and the space of where you were really listening and holding that conversation. I want it to be a win for the solution in terms of what that means for anyone else. And so, right, a fight or argument is rarely about doing the dishes, right? Not at all. It's a frustration for something else. Most people aren't, what's the word I want to look for? And myself included, because I think about where I don't do that up front. Most people don't have the courage or have the belief that they can have the meaningful conversation when they need to have it. And by the way, that's not when when things are charged. It's in a neutral space where you can say, and then it's the XYZ conversation, which I'll talk about another day. But it's that space of being able to take some of the emotion out of it and be able to hold a space to say, help me understand what just happened, right? Help me understand what that argument was about last night, because it doesn't feel like it was about that. It feels like something else is going on, and I want to be present, and I'm ready to listen. Help me understand what's going on. And by the way, that's a really powerful phrase to say, and because I know that a lot of you that have gone through communications training and everything else, you've heard the phrase, help me understand. You use the language, and there's a big and in there. When you say, help me understand, and you need to be wide open, present to create that connection, and you need to allow yourself to be vulnerable for what they might say, because they may say something or they might convey something that isn't something you like to hear. It might be something about how you're showing up for them. And instead of getting defensive and resistant, to be able to really say, help me understand, you need to be able to just hold that space. And so that is my invitation, or my consideration for this week, is to really be more mindful about where you're actually listening versus where you're hearing, And I want you to feel the difference between the two. I want you to start to really recognize how to drop in and listen, because we could do a lot. We could create so much change right now with the fact that everything feels a little heavy simply by listening. Simply by listening with our hearts and not our heads. So that's the other thing. You're listening from here. You're not listening from here. This is hearing. This is listening. And for a lot of people, that 12 inches between their heart and head can be the most powerful path for them to cross. And I want you to think about when you're hearing, you're here. Hearing is head, listening is heart. And you need to drop into your heart, which is a very vulnerable, open, compassionate space. That's the only way you can really listen, is to be in your being, is to be in your heart. And so if nothing else, I want you to remember, head is hearing, heart is listening. And so that's what I want to leave you with today. I want you to go into your week, and I want you to challenge yourself. I want you to invite yourself, actually a better word, let's use that. Let's invite ourselves to listen from a deeper heart space and let our brain take a break, right? We don't need to listen so much. We don't need to hear so much. We need to listen. Get rid of the noise. Destroy the noise that's going on. Noise is the hearing. Listening is the breath, is the being, is the connecting, is the leaning in. So with that, everybody, I hope you have a phenomenal week. Happy Monday. Thank you all for joining this morning, and I'll catch up with y'all tomorrow morning, 7:30. See you then. Mwah.